All right, welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's good to see some visitors here today. Back row. No, I'm actually really excited today for our guest speaker, and I'll introduce Geoff and Darcy in just a minute. But first up, just really quick, remember next week we're not meeting here. We're meeting in the GSC. So I'll try to put some signs up on the door if you forget and you come here. But we're going to go to the GSC, and there's going to be a showcase of all the Opportunity Quest entrants, right? You guys know who you are. So all those of you that have entered, make sure you're planning on that, because this is your chance to win an additional $500 for your idea. And that's all going to happen that day. So Wednesday at lunch. If you're in the class, you're going to have to go and you'll get credit by voting. So we're going to either have you scan your card when you're over there, just like we do here, or in the voting software, we'll have you put your name in so we'll know everyone that went and voted. So again, next week, don't come here, go to the GSC. You'll have to go there and get credit for your attendance by voting or scanning your ID. And I'll post this on Canvas. Okay? So, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Geoff and Darcy Davis, who are both here visiting us today. And I'm just so thrilled that they would come down and that Geoff's willing to share some of his experience and story with us, and Darcy as well. And if you have any tough questions for Darcy, I'm sure she's ready to take them. Geoff is a friend of mine. He was actually my boss. We worked together at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where Geoff was part of an amazing team of people who launched the self-reliance services program in dozens of nations across the country. So he's currently the CEO of Cicero Impact Capital, and he leads the firm's overall strategy, fundraising, and deal process. He's also a partner at Cicero Group, chairman of the board of Align 17, a UBS-sponsored impact investing platform for institutional and high net worth individuals. And if you don't know what that means rich people. And a venture partner at Arcturus Capital, a $500 million impact investment fund targeting job creation in distressed urban and rural U.S. markets. And I think Geoff might talk a little bit about impact investing today. Prior to Cicero Impact Capital, Geoff spent 5 years helping the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints establish a self-reliance training program in 120 countries. So it was more than dozens, it was 120. And leading the Perpetual Education Fund, an educational loan fund operating in 90 countries. Is anyone here familiar with PEF? Anyone a PEF recipient? Okay, we've got a few hands. Good. What about self-reliance? A few more hands. Good. Geoff was previously the president and CEO of Unitus, one of the first commercial investors in microfinance, and co-founder of Unitus Equity Fund, which is now Elevar Equity. He has founded, co-founded, or advised 25 startups and investment funds, sat on 12 boards, and helped over 75 million people work their way out of poverty. He has earned degrees from Brigham Young and Harvard universities. So please welcome Geoff Davis.
Thanks, Russ. Although when Russ and I worked together, he wasn't allowed to call me his boss. Now that he's the boss and in charge, he's taking advantage of that. We worked together. Russ played a really important role. How many of you are interacting with Russ at the Entrepreneurship Center in addition to this class? Anybody? So I actually got my start, well, not my start, but I was in an entrepreneurship center, and I think there was even some kind of seminar at BYU when I was an undergraduate. And the professor there told me to read a certain book, which I read, and I used the principles in that book to change some things in a business I was running, and I eventually sold it. And I'll tell a little bit more about that, but the point of that is, listen to him. He's experienced, he has lots of great ideas, and is here to help. So if you're interested in business, go ask Russ for more. I'm also glad my wife is here with me. I'll talk a little bit about her later, so I don't get choked up now. Didn't work. So how many of you have started a business? Anyone? She has, but she won't raise her hand. Okay, so 10-ish, great. How many of you have worked for a startup or a young company that was not too old? Okay, how many of your families had businesses? Farm, electrician, things like that. Okay, how many of you want to do something in business and maybe entrepreneurship, starting your own thing? Okay, has everybody raised their hand? No? Okay, who was born in the first half of the year? Like January to June. Who was born June to December? Now has everybody raised their hand? Okay, we're engaged. Get started a little bit. So as Russ mentioned, sorry, this is this the equivalent of the back row if you're sitting over here? No, this is still the front row? Okay, good. So I'll wander back and forth. So as Russ mentioned, I've been a part of starting a bunch of different businesses and different kinds of businesses throughout my life. And I'm going to tell a few of those stories and then use those to illustrate some principles. I'm going to focus on stories when I was about your age. As Russ told you, I've done a whole bunch of different things, but I'm going to talk about stories when I was about your age and some of the things I did. I have two goals here. The first is to share some of the things I've learned and hope that it will help you somehow. And the second is to encourage you and inspire you and help you feel like, yeah, I can go do that. That guy's not any smarter than I am, so if he could do it, I can do it. And try to encourage you along the way. So, a couple things. When those of you who said you've already started a business, raise your hand again. Okay, somebody just call out. What was your business? Super quickly.
Handmade jewelry and wood crafts.
Okay, perfect. What was yours? Contracting. Who else? Are you going to admit it? No? Okay, who else? Someone over here had, yeah. Guitar lessons. Perfect. What else? Window washing. I just told Seth. Where's Seth? See, window washing. It's a good business, right? You can totally pay your way through school that way. That's great. So my first one that I can remember, I was about 10, and this was before Costco. There was a catalog where you could order things from places like Costco, like in a Costco equivalent, big wholesale. And I ordered a tub of red vines. And at first I thought, this is so awesome, I'm going to eat this whole thing. I took it to school, and kids wanted some. And so I started selling red vines for 25 cents a piece when I was 10. Sold the whole tub. So I bought another tub and went back again, and the administration learned about it and shut me down. They said I couldn't do that. So I've been a libertarian ever since. Just kidding. Political economy joke. And then when I was about 14, kind of like the window washing and the guitar lessons, I mowed lawns. And I had a bunch of lawns to mow. On the same day, I had a big soccer game. And I decided, okay, I'm going to go to the soccer game instead. And I got my buddy to mow the lawn. And I got paid $15 to mow the lawn. I paid him $10. And I came home, I got the $15, paid him the $10, and I looked at the $5, and I said, I just played a soccer game and made $5. I love this. I'm going to do more. So then I just organized the kids in the neighborhood to do the lawn mowing, and I just did the marketing. I just went out and got business, got jobs. And then as an undergraduate, I started 3 businesses in college. One was a summer job. I went home to California for the summer. And my sister was painting houses. That was her job for the summer, painting houses. Long, hard, hot work in California. And the manager said, yeah, we don't have quite enough business. We can almost run 2 crews, but we don't have quite enough business. And I was a returned missionary from the church, and so I said, if you want, I'll go knock doors for you and try to generate business. Would you want that? And he said, would you? That'd be great. I'll give you X% of every house we paint. So I started going around. They added another crew, and I kept going around. They added another crew, and then I started taking the painters, and every Wednesday night we would go out and knock houses. Ended up having 4 crews. And I was not smart. How many know Vivint? You guys heard of Vivint? Do you know their business model? Basically, returned missionaries go door to door selling things. If I was smart enough, I would have invented Vivint, but I didn't. I just thought it was a good summer business and went back to college. The next one was I was selling. I'm not going to tell you the full story in this for the sake of time, but selling. I'll let your imagination wander on this one. Emeralds that I imported from Afghanistan and black pearls that I imported from Tahiti, and I sold them in San Francisco in the Chinese gem market in San Francisco. I got out of that one when the mafia got involved. But the one I'll tell you a little bit about is a translation company. I have served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in France and spoke French. And I had a friend whose wife worked at a consulting firm. And they did work all around the world. And his wife knew the translation manager and said, we need somebody to translate some things in French. Would you do it? So I went to talk to her. She gave me a bunch of things to translate. I translated them, took them back, made 24 cents a word, which was like probably $40 an hour or something. It was great money. When I took them back to her, she said, oh, thank you so much for doing this and for doing it so quickly. I'm trying to manage 7 different languages, and it's just such a pain in the neck trying to manage all these different translators. She was just being nice and talking to me. And I said, really? You want me to do that for you? Because I'm in the language program where I go to school, and I know people in all these languages. Would you really do that? I said, yeah, you just give me all your translation work, and I'll go figure out how to do it. So she did that. 7 languages, and I organized groups in Spanish, in French, in Portuguese, in German, etc. Each one had a language leader, and I would get the project in, and I'd go hand it to the German language leader. They would manage 3, 4, 5, 6 students, do the translation in 3 or 4 days, get it back. The language leader would edit it, make sure it was right, turn it back into me, and I'd turn it into her. The students were making about $22 an hour. How many of you here are making $22 an hour? Anyone making 22 or more? Yeah? Okay, see, Seth, washing windows, more than $22 an hour. Exactly, but do it in some other town, right? Not here. Let you keep it going. What's that? Oh, sorry, you're shocking her. Okay, no worries. So one time I got a big project in, a stack about this big of surveys to translate. But I had planned a trip to Moab to go mountain biking with my buddies that weekend. This was doing the French. This is actually how I started it. This was doing French, so I could have translated all of those. And I paid the students half of what I got paid. So 50% margin is pretty good. So I would have made a little over $3,000 by doing this translation work. Instead, I gave it to the French manager. They went and translated. I went to Moab, came back, picked it up, dropped it off, and looked at this check for $3,200. I went and gave a check for $1,600, and this was like my soccer thing. Like, I went mountain biking and made $1,600. That's half my semester's tuition. Paid that off. Anyway, kept doing that. That grew over time. This was right before Salt Lake won the Winter Olympics. It gives you a little bit of dating on me, how old I am. And so we ended up doing some work with them and some banks in Canada, and things just kind of kept growing. And then I was in this entrepreneurship class that I mentioned, and the professor said, read this book. It's called The E-Myth Revisited. So I'll give all of you that free advice right there. The E-Myth Revisited about entrepreneurship. And it basically said, don't just work in your business, work on your business. And it said, don't think of the product that you sell as your product. Think of your business as your product. Productize it, systematize it, figure out ways for things to just go easily and consistently. Because I was just doing it on my own, kind of just hustle. And so I did that. I brought on a manager who was kind of the opposite from me. He was very organized, very detail-oriented, liked structure, liked process, et cetera. And he figured out all of our processes. Okay, first we'll do this, and then we do this, and so does the editing and corrections and whatnot. And that was a little bit annoying to me because it felt a little constraining, but I appreciated the idea behind it, and it made things a lot easier to manage. But here's the big deal. Eventually, after I graduated, I sold that company, and I went and started a microcredit bank in Mexico. I couldn't have sold it if it had all depended on me, and if it was disorganized, and Jeff was running around doing stuff. We had systems, we had things written down, we had ways of doing things, we kept records of our clients, et cetera. So there's one of the first things, 2 things I learned. Hire good people that are better than you in ways where you're weak, and learn how to systematize things. Okay, the next one, actually, I'm going to tell you a few stories. Okay, so pause that for a second. I'm going to go back and tell you some stories while I was in school. And this is going to relate to your new center, Russ, is going to be called the Grit Center or something like that. So this is related to grit and hustle. So I was always hustling. My dad graduated from law school with 7 kids. Is this a graduate school or only undergrad? Undergrad. So anybody, can you imagine 3, 4, 5 years from now, finishing law school, 7 kids, right? It's not like you're going to have a ton of money between now and then. So my dad graduated with 7 kids, then had another one. I was the oldest. Okay, 7th grade. 7th grade is kind of a socially important and socially awkward time, right? 7th grade, I got my shoes from Albertsons. Grape, scratch and sniff. Seriously, you could scratch the side right here. I don't know how you could reach it, but scratch it and smell it. It smelled like grape. That's how things were. So I always had to hustle as a kid if I wanted something. And I know, mean parents, right? It's all they could do, though. So anyway, so I was always hustling in school, too. I was a part of a group that put on a conference on the status of women at BYU. We had to get all kinds of university approvals. We brought people from the United Nations in to talk about this, and it was a big thing on campus. I also decided I wanted to go to a conference at the University of Michigan, where anybody heard of Muhammad Yunus from the Grameen Bank? Won the Nobel Prize. Anyway, this guy who was pretty famous, I had heard of him. He was speaking at this University of Michigan Law School conference. I really wanted to go. It was all about microfinance, which we'll talk about in a second. I wanted to go. I didn't have the money to fly. And I somehow heard that the university had vans, those big 12-passenger vans, that they would let official university events use for things. And so I went to figure out how to do it. I applied, et cetera. They said, sorry, we can't give you a van just for one person. It's only for official things. So I got another 10 students together. Say, hey, you want to go to Michigan for the weekend? We got 10 of us together, applied to get this van. So they gave us a van, and we drove across the country to Michigan to go to this conference. And I met this guy named Muhammad Yunus. And I'll skip ahead, a little spoiler alert. I ended up working with him for 3 years and helped him start a foundation in Washington, D.C. that did work all over the world. So anyway, that's another thing I don't want to come back to, but just hustle, getting stuff done, doing a bunch of things all the time. I threw a hunger banquet. Have you heard of a hunger banquet? We advertised this big thing for the whole school. We wanted 200 people to come, and everybody had to pay, I think, $25 for this banquet. And when they came in the door, they were given a ranking, 1, 2, or 3. The people with 3s represented the poorest people in the world. They got a dinner of rice and beans on the floor on paper plates and just a little scoop of each. The people that represented, and that was about 70%, it was all proportional to how people live in the world. That was about 70% of the people. The number 2s got rice and beans at a table, and then the number 3s were sat up at nice tables with tablecloths and crystal and silver, and they got a steak dinner or a shrimp, or I can't remember what it was. But we raised a bunch of money from that. So now let me come back to selling this company. So after I graduated, I sold the company, and I used the money from that hunger banquet and some of my own money to go to Mexico to start a microcredit bank, microcredit program. Anyone heard of microcredit? No? So it's basically you give really small loans, $100, usually to a woman, to start a small business so that she can, and she pays the loan back with the profits and works her way out of poverty and her family out of poverty with the profits. When I got down there, the first loan we gave was to a woman that I'd seen several times. She lived in a hut, a little hut, dirt floor, pigs going in and out of the door all the time, cooked over an open fire in a corner with the smoke just going straight up. This is in Mexico. I'd been there 3 or 4 times as we were trying to figure out how big the loan should be, what people were going to do, et cetera. Every time I saw her, she was wearing the same outfit. The shoes were, the girls will appreciate this, they were jellies. Remember the jellies? With half the straps broken, right? And she had the same skirt on and the same shirt on. It was so much that I wondered, how does she wash her clothes? What does she do when she washes her clothes? Does she, wrap something around her or what? I only saw her in one thing. So we thought that most people were going to ask for about a $125 loan. She was one of the first people that came up. She said, I'd like $27. And I had started these businesses. I thought I was pretty smart and pretty cool. $27. What are you going to do with $27? And she said, I sell goat cheese in the market. And pasteurized goat cheese sells for almost twice the price as unpasteurized cheese. Pasteurization is you heat your milk up to a certain temperature and it kills the bacteria so it lasts longer. She says, pasteurized cheese sells for almost twice as much as unpasteurized. There's a specialized thermometer that I can buy for $27 so that I can tell it when it's the temperature so that I can, almost double my income. I said, amazing, here's the money, go do it. A couple weeks later, I saw her again when she was making her payments. I said, how's it going? She said, oh, it's going so great. I used to make about 75 cents a day, and now I'm making $1.40. Holy cow. A, that's a little bit of money. B, that's a big change, right? An enormous change. And so remember, I'd seen her house, I'd seen her clothes, I knew what her life was like. I said, so now what are you going to do with your money? Imagine if all of you all of a sudden doubled your salary. What would you do? How many would get an Apple Watch or whatever? She said, oh, that's easy. I'm going to be able to send my first child to school ever. He's 10. No one in my family has ever gone to school. The first person in my family is now going to be able to go to school. And I was amazed that it could be $27 and just doubling her income could do that. And I said, but why do you have to pay for school? She said, oh, he has to pay for the bus fare. He has to pay for his school supplies. He has to buy his own pencils, his own paper, etc. And he has to wear a school uniform. And we could never afford that before. Now I'm going to be able to afford to send him there. Something clicked in me. In my international development classes and other classes, there's this debate about what is development, what constitutes development, etc. And I realized then it's just choice. That woman had expanded options, expanded choices, and she decided what was best for her, not a government, not an NGO, not someone else. She decided. Anyway, there, Russ, there's a little plug for that. How's that? Okay, so then after doing that, in Mexico, then I met again Muhammad Yunus, that Nobel Prize guy that I had met at Michigan. I met him at a conference in Washington, D.C. I told him what had happened in Mexico, and he asked if I would be interested in working with him. He was going to start an organization in Washington, D.C., and wanted someone to help. So I said, yeah, for sure. I had a job in California doing biomedical engineering, which we won't talk about now. I went back, resigned the next day, and drove across the country to Washington, D.C., and ended up spending 3 years with him, traveling the world, having amazing experiences with this incredible man, meeting with Queen Sophia, Queen Rania, with Ted Turner, if you know these people, just meeting with big deal people all around the world, and meeting with the people like the $27 loan woman in Mexico, helping start new programs. Let's see. I'm going to jump ahead super quickly. I'm going to tell one more story. How about that? Russ, what time should I end?
So 1:20 is the end.
Okay, and we want questions. So let me go for just 10-ish more minutes and we'll do questions. Okay, so one more story that relates to what Russ alluded to now I'm doing called impact investing. So after all that, I thought, I want better training. I had been kind of a scrappy, nitty-gritty entrepreneur, and I wanted better training. And so this is going to sound easy and glib. It wasn't, but I'm not going to tell the story now. So I went to Harvard, right? Yeah. No, but so I applied to business school and graduate school in different places and ended up going to Harvard and spent a lot of time then studying what needs to happen to help microfinance, these small loans, help them grow dramatically. About 20% of the people in the world that needed a loan and could use a loan and benefit from one had one at the time. So supply-demand gap, enormous. Those of you who have taken Economics 101, that shouldn't be, but it was. And so I spent time thinking about why is that and what can we do about it? And when I finished school with a few other people, we started a company called Unitus that tried to fix that problem, and we applied business principles to social problems. We used venture capital and investment banking and strategy consulting to help the best microfinance programs in the world grow really large. And in the process, we started investing money and then making money. We ended up making quite a bit of money. It was really, really significant. And the way we designed it, the more people we helped work their way out of poverty, the more money we ended up making. It's kind of like Walmart, right? There's low margins, but massive, massive scale. That's one of the principles that I want to come back to, finding ways to apply your skills to some social problem. Okay, so those are the stories. I'm going to now talk about some of the principles and the things I've learned throughout that process. But here's a really important point. That was my style. That's the way I operated. It doesn't mean it's right for you. You may be totally risk adverse. And that's fine. There are other ways to do it. So I'm going to talk about some of these principles and things I've learned, but it's the way I learned them. So if it works for you, apply them. If it doesn't, remember them and tell them to your sister or someone else that might benefit from it. So first thing I learned, opportunity spotting. Just become really, really good. This is if you're interested in entrepreneurship and starting something. Become really good at opportunity spotting. And opportunities are often disguised as problems. You remember that lady where I started the translation business? She had a problem. It was hard for her to manage all these translators. That became an opportunity for me, right? So become really good. Find pain points, things that are bothering you. As we drove in here, we drove down to Nephi and then came across whatever road that is, and one of the towns we came in, there was a movie theater that was about the size of 2 mobile homes put together, right? Because the people in that area wanted a movie theater. There wasn't enough to have a big one, so good. Someone created a small little movie theater. I've been in slums in Africa and in India where a person has a little hut about the size of this right here with a black and white TV that's about this big, and then 10 boxes seated here. You pay 10 cents to get to go in and watch TV for 10 minutes or half an hour or whatever, right? So found a pain point, found a solution. So try to generate ideas, but ideas are cheap. Ideas are really cheap. Hopefully you have a lot of them. That's great. They don't really mean, unless it's like theoretical physics or, Einstein equals MC squared or something. Unless you put it into action, it doesn't mean that much. If you have this idea for a great little movie theater or translation business, if it's just an idea, it doesn't make any impact on the world. So do it. Here's the next thing I learned. An idea, this is going to sound obvious, but think it through. An idea is not a business. And then the next, Russ can help you think through all of that. Another thing I learned is that with about 20%, it takes about 20% more effort to think 1 or 2 or 300 times bigger. About 20% more effort to think 200, 300 times bigger. You need to think a little harder, think a little farther out to think dramatically bigger. So the window washing guy, did he take off? Oh, there he is, he's ducked down. So the window washing guy, you're doing it right now. A little more effort, could you have 10 window washers? Just a little more effort thinking it through, you can think much bigger. Okay, that's the first thing. Second, hustle and grit. I'll let Russ talk more about grit and the importance of that. I'll talk about some of the things here, but the fact that the center is going to be called that, super important. I told you about my scratch and sniff shoes, just doing lots of things. Not everything I did worked. Not everything I did worked. Lots of things didn't work. And so plan on that. Plan on things not working from the start. It's important to plan. Have you ever heard there's a saying in the military, the best plan doesn't last 3 minutes in the realities of battle. But if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Does that make sense? So think things through, be as thoughtful as you can, but don't expect whatever you've thought of and whatever your plans are to work when they hit reality. Expect them to, and so plan to iterate, to change, try a little thing, test, change, evolve, etc. Working hard. I resumed through this. Sounds like, oh, everything that guy does works and it's easy life. No, lots of hard work, lots of late nights, lots of sacrifices. As an undergrad, lots of not going to, I don't know if you have a football team, but not going to the football game, not going to the dance, not, skipping the date or whatever to get something done. So expect sacrifice. Here's another thing. This is going to sound metaphysical or something, but voice your desires, voice your goals. There's something really real to that. So set goals, write them down, and then talk to people about them. Even crazy goals. Like my daughter right now is a sophomore at BYU, and she is going to bike across Europe this summer with one of her friends. Could be kind of crazy. but she wanted to do a big bike trip. She just started talking about it to people. I really want to do a bike trip in Europe. I would be so cool to do a bike trip in Europe. Pretty soon someone said, yeah, me too. I've been wanting to do that. Really? Should we? And then they tried to calculate it out. Oh, we need $400 in, 2 weeks to buy the tickets there. Oh, how can we do it? She thankfully didn't call us. How can we do it? Oh, we're going to sell blood. So they started selling their blood, all these things. So, but the fact, if she hadn't been talking about this, it wouldn't have happened. So it's a strange principle. If you just express something you want or need, somehow forces move towards that. Okay, the third principle. There are three principles that I've learned about business, and then I'm going to talk three on the personal side, and then we're going to ask questions. So get questions ready, or I'll just cold call people, starting with Kate. Okay, so here's my third principle on entrepreneurship and running a business. People, people, people. Listen to this. Listen to this phrase. If you want, you can write it down and thank me later. It all starts with a great hire, and it all ends with a good one. What does that mean? It all starts with a great hire, and it all ends with a good one. If you just hire good people, call them average, kind of just good people, that's the type of company you'll have. If you want a great company, you have to hire great people. Every hire you make needs to raise the quality of the average quality of the team. Does that make sense? So you want people that are contributing, that are adding, and ideally doing things that you aren't good at. You want people that will work harder than you are, that are smarter than you are, that have better people skills, better everything, just so that you're constantly raising the bar. Let's see, so overhiring. Here's another one. Hire slow, fire fast. Hire slow, fire fast. It's better, it won't feel like it. When you're managers, right, Russ can validate this. You were in HR for a while too, weren't you? So tell me if this is true. Sometimes you have open positions that feel so painful to not have filled. You really need that person. I promise, it's always better to wait for the right person. Right? Am I right? You just get someone that's so-so, they're going to do a so-so job, and you don't raise the quality. You wait a little longer, as painful it is, you find someone amazing, and they take everything forward. You agree? Okay. Now, this is going to start to transition. Great people are drawn to a great purpose, drawn to meaning. How many of you just want a job where you just get paid and things are just fine? Okay, some of you, good, safety. How many of you want to do something that's meaningful, that really integrates? Okay, exactly. So great people are drawn to great purpose. So find a way, now I'm transitioning, find a way to integrate purpose into everything you do. If you own a gas station or a window washing company or whatever, how can you make life great for your employees? Can you provide daycare support? Can you provide a college tuition reimbursement program? Whatever. Just find ways to give your business more meaning than money. You'll be happier and you'll attract greater people, better people. Okay, now some personal things. You have to decide now to put your family first. There will be demands on your time. There's always too much to do, right? You probably feel like that right now in school, right? How many of you feel like you're ahead in every single class? Anybody? Show off. Okay. That's why you... No, I'm just kidding. Great. Okay, so 3 of you. 98% aren't, right? There's always more to do. You could always revise that paper one more time. You could always spend another hour studying for the test, right? That's going to be the same way in business. There's always more to do. So decide now to put your family first. There will always be things to do. Your kids won't always be young. So my kids like to do skits for Father's Day, and they're basically roasts, where they make. So easy. Come on, this is my time. But they really do have a lot to work with. So one of the stories they tell was a time when I went to the movie theater with a Barbie purse super glued to my finger. I actually went in public to a movie with a Barbie purse super glued to my finger. How did that happen? Every Friday night is date night with my wife. I zoomed home from work with, 7 minutes to get ready and turn around to go to this movie with my wife, my daughter's Barbie purse had broken. The strap on it had, oh no, right? When you're 6, it's a big deal. And so I stopped, got out the super glue, sat on the floor, super glued it back together, and I was holding it, because I was hurrying, holding it like this, the wrong way. And when I released it to see if it had stuck together, it stuck to my finger. And so I tried for a little bit to get it off, it couldn't. So I went trotting into the movie theater like this, and I said, no, she'll pay, I can't fit it in here. So anyway, and they also tell a story where I'd be rushing out on my way to work, and they'd say, hey, Dad, want to play Barbies? And, I'm late for work, I probably have an important meeting, whatever. I don't even like Barbies. And I said, sure. So I sat down on the floor, 30 seconds, we play, whatever, play Barbies, and take off. They're in their teens now, they're late teens, they still talk about that time when they were 6. So that really matters. I could have been maybe on time to my meeting, maybe I was 2 minutes later than I would have been, but it lasted forever for them. So decide now to put your family first. Decide now because it will be hard in the moment. And then the last one on this is, I'm not going to talk about it because I will cry, just say marry well. She's awesome. Hopefully you'll get to hear from her in a little bit. See, there you go. It's an important decision. I know it's probably one of the big ones you're all thinking about right now. Do it well, do it wisely. Marriage lasts forever, it's a long time, so make sure you do it well. Next, integrity. Integrity. This is going to sound obvious. It is extremely easy to do little slips, little by little by little by little in business. In life, it is, right? You're excited about something, it's not quite done, but you might exaggerate it a little bit, and then that leads to something else, and that leads to something else. Decide now to have total integrity. Integrity, what is integer? 1, integrated, right? Your external actions consistent with your internal values and your internal desire. So decide now to have deep integrity. And think about this, because oftentimes the little slips, we don't totally notice them. They're in the moment. We're in a negotiation, or we're in a sales pitch or something. We don't notice this little slip. But sometimes we do. Sometimes there will be times when you could do something. Actually, I'm going to give this example. My wife, when we were in graduate school, my wife worked at an internet startup. It was kind of a startup within a startup. Boston Globe, big old-fashioned newspaper. She worked on the Boston.com side, the internet side, and she ran their auction site. Back then, every newspaper had its own eBay, its own auction site. They thought that was how classifieds were going to go. She ran it for them. And the company that provided the technology was going to go public. And she got shares. She got offered shares. And this was back, if you've heard of the first dot-com craze and the bust, back in 2000, she had shares that would have been worth, we calculated, about $36,000. And we would have had to pay about $1,000 to get them. And the next day, they'd be worth $36,000, something like that. I don't remember exactly the numbers. And that was a lot of money. That's a lot of money now. That was a lot of money in graduate school. It could have paid for the second half of graduate school for us. And so we did it. We opened the account to buy the shares and had the money there. And we're about to execute the purchase of them. Right when her CEO sent an email you remember this? Send an email to everybody. You don't remember this? Send an email to everybody saying, we don't want you to purchase shares in this company. We don't want it to seem like there was anything inappropriate going on, like we were only using their services because they were giving us shares, et cetera. Things were crazy in this dot-com bubble. And so we had to decide what to do. She was pregnant and we were going to have our first daughter at the time. She thought she was probably not going to go back to work afterwards. So she could have resigned right then. Then he wouldn't be her CEO anymore. Then we went through all this, then we could buy these shares and make this money. We went back and forth, and we ended up deciding $36,000 is a cheap price for our integrity. A heck of a lot of money then, but it would really be a cheap price for our integrity, like a fire sale on our integrity. Anyway, enough on that. Next, I have 2 more. I've already talked a little bit about this, but integrating purpose into everything you do. Think a little harder about how can you make whatever you're doing, create social value, environmental value, something like that. Let's see here. What's that? Louder. Okay, my wife's telling me to stop talking. So basically, why are you here on Earth right now? What's going to happen? Why will the world be any better for you having been here? Each of you has incredible potential, and you're here now for some reason. You can help someone, something, some group, some city, some state, some country, the world. You can do something. Think about what that is. I'm going to wrap up by just asking you to think for a second. Close your eyes, turn off your phones, just think for a second. Lastly, I'll just encourage you to share that with somebody. Share that with a friend, a boyfriend, girlfriend, family member, something like that. Okay, I'm going to pause and open to questions. And for me or for Darcy. Any questions? Any comments? Yeah. What's your name?
Kareem.
Kareem.
Yes. Is it easy to establish a microcredit company, and how to make sure that you give money to the right people?
Okay, is it easy to start a microcredit company, and how do you make sure you give it to the right people? The answer is it's easy and it's hard. The concepts are really, really simple, but implementing them are really difficult. So if you're interested in trying it, I would encourage you to read a lot and learn what's been done out there. There are a lot of ways to mess it up. One of the most important things to do is get a loan management system, because if you try to keep track of it all in Excel, it quickly breaks. So that's just one very practical thing. And how do you make sure the right people get the loans? What we did is we didn't decide. We didn't decide who got the loans. And if you want more information, Russ can tell you a lot about what he did in the South Pacific, actually. Right? Wasn't it the, yeah. But what we did is we said, oh, Kareem, you want a loan? Fantastic. Go get 4 other people who are going to also want loans, who know you, and are going to guarantee your loan. So if you don't pay, they're going to pay. So we didn't decide, we had the people decide, because they know each other better, right? You know your fellow students and their reputation and whatever. You also know what's a good business idea better than somebody from far away might know. Okay? Good question. And I can talk more after, and Russ can tell you a lot. He spent a lot of time doing that. Other questions or comments?
How many mistakes would you say you make in an average?
How many mistakes do I make in an average week? If I count my home, probably 50 to 100. Is that right? And how many do I get right? You know, I don't know, 200, 300, 400, whatever. The idea partially is not to avoid mistakes. You could avoid mistakes. It would just take you a long time to gather the information, make the decisions, et cetera, and then the opportunity might have passed. So part of it is making decisions and then reacting to the mistakes and trying to improve along the way. Good question. Others? Who learned something or thought something interesting they want to share with the group? Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying that the hustle and grit and the purpose, like, I think those are really, really important principles that we can apply not only to if you start a business or if you do have a business or just to school or home family things. I think that they're just things that as students we should be hustling. We should have grit, and in our family we should make sure everything we do has a purpose. So we're not just, watching Disney Plus,
Okay,
all day long.
great. Do I need to repeat that for the camera? Did you hear that, camera? Apply hustle and grit in your life as well now as students, and purpose in everything you do with your family, with other things. Good point. Any other questions, or anyone want to share anything else you thought? See, I could have talked longer. Just kidding. Go ahead.
What did your wife think about you being in business entrepreneurship as opposed to a job that's more safe?
Okay. What does my wife think about me and entrepreneurship as opposed to a more safe job? Since we've known each other, done 1, 2, 3, we've probably done 12 different things, and we've lived about that many different places. How's it been for you? Here, stand up and talk, Darcy. He said, how is it for, can she talk on there? Come up here. So how's it been for you being the wife of an entrepreneur?
That's what your question was? So it's exciting, and the biggest thing I can say that was helpful for me is that I bought into his purpose, I knew that his purpose was to help people that were in poverty get out of poverty. So all of the crazy hours, I felt like I was supporting him, and therefore, because he had these gifts that I don't have, I'm a detail-oriented project manager. So his visionary capacities were making a difference in the world. I could see that they were, and by letting him go, I knew that we were doing this together. There's a whole lot more to Geoff's life story than what he shared. And that whole rest of the life story is what I was in charge of. And
We homeschooled our kids for 8 years.
he almost died. I mean, there are a lot of other things that were happening in his life during all of this. And so part of that is we were a team in what we wanted out of life. And that often meant that I was sort of the supporting actress. I wasn't in the limelight. I wasn't getting credit. But without me, he couldn't have had a lot of the things that he had in life. And so in a marriage, you become a team, and you say, we're Team Davis. This isn't Geoff, this isn't Darcy, this is Team Davis, and what's the best for the whole and what we're trying to accomplish. So I feel very much a part of his Harvard graduation. I feel very much a part of helping these millions of people get out of poverty because we were in it together. I don't know if that answers your question. I did have to let him go a lot, and often we would have to brainstorm ways to make life work for me, home with little kids, by myself. What can we do to support me? So it wasn't always just about him. We just said, well, how do we make it work for me also? And that worked.
Here's a very practical point. Don't get a puppy when you have a new baby. We learned that.
That's one of the mistakes we made.
That's right. Anything else? And anybody that needs to go can take off, and I'm also happy to stay and talk for a while longer. Any other questions, or should we dismiss? Okay, you're dismissed.